Welcome to the UNSECURITY podcast. Each week, Evan and Brad give an inside look at current information security news, breaches, best practices, and other things you should know to improve your information security. Here are your hosts, FRSecure's Evan Francine and Brad Nye.
Hey, UNSECURITY podcast listeners, this is episode 54. And the date is November 18th, 2019. I'm Evan Francine, and it's my show this week. Joining me, as usual, is Brad Nye. Brad's here with me now. Say hi, Brad.
Hi. Good morning, Evan.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We got a good show today. We've got, you and I, we're going to catch up. I've been on this Security Studio Roadshow for, seems like ever.
Yeah.
But I'm loving it. And, lots of stories to share. I know you've been busy with a bunch of things, and we'll get to kind of some of that stuff. That'll be fun. And then I want to get real. We have a guest, and I'm going to introduce him after you and I catch up. We've got Kenneth Bechtel joining us in today's podcast. You're going to get to know Ken, and then we're going to talk about just kind of his cool past, his cool history, a lot of the wisdom he's going to share. But then he's also having this. We have this issue. We have this talent shortage problem, supposedly. Yet he's not the first person who's come to me or brought it to my attention that he's having trouble finding a job. So let's dig in on that stuff. And then we'll talk. I have this idea for a kind of add to our show. I think it'd be fun. It sets us apart. We'll talk about that, and then we'll get into the news.
Sounds good.
All right. So what have you been up to, Brad?
Stuff.
What would you say you do here?
I don't know.
Yeah, you do. You do stuff.
I've been doing, I got a lot of, the sales support, the 2020 planning, the business side of things, which is different for me. It's not, I think we talked about it, or we've talked about it a little bit, where it's, security's kind of comes second nature to us, and the business side of it is like, oh, okay, that's different.
Right.
This is hard. But, I've been doing that. I spoke on Thursday at event on like IR and DR around cloud vendors, and what should you do, and got a lot of like the wide eyes and cool. No, I'm not doing any of that. So
right. Well, there's 70% of the rest of America.
Yeah. The fun part was then all the vendors that went up after me, because I was the first speaker, is they all were like, and security, and looked right at me. So it was kind of fun to
buy our stuff. Buy our stuff.
Yeah. They were all very
Don't worry
nervous.
Don't worry about tool crawl. Just keep buying our stuff.
Yeah. Well, I did have the trifecta. I texted you. One person said, we're the easy button with AI and machine learning, all in one sentence.
That's incredible.
I almost had to get up and walk out.
And so I know who that vendor is, and I won't out them because
that's not what we do.
No, we don't. There is no easy button.
No.
In your AI probably isn't AI.
Right.
And what was the other one?
Machine learning.
Oh, okay. Sure. Good. All right.
Yeah. So
buy some of that stuff and make all your security problems go away.
Yeah.
Well, I was all over the place last week. I was in Rochester, New York, working with a client there. You know who this client is.
Yep.
This is great. Ryan Abraham. It's the first time he's worked at FRSecure for 2.5 years.
Right.
And this was the first time he and I got a chance to work together. Have you ever had a chance to do anything with Ryan?
Yeah.
Okay. Isn't he awesome?
Yeah.
I had so much fun. He's got such a great attitude, and he's, he works.
Yeah.
He's a hard worker. But that was good. I don't know what we did. What did we do? A couple of projects, like 3-4 projects wrapped into one, sort of. A custom methodology on one. They want to take that custom methodology and make it known to kind of all of their peers. They belong to a peer organization. Yeah. Which, is good for business. It gets people on the same page, Had some good barbecue, went to Dinosaur.
That is good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, best ribs so far on the Security Studio Roadshow. Came back on Tuesday night, so I was out on Sunday, flew back Tuesday night late, was back on the road again on Wednesday to Kansas City. Talk about good barbecue.
Yeah. That's a good place to go for barbecue.
Yeah. We went to Q39. That was our rental car bus driver told us to go to Q39.
Okay.
So that was pretty good. And then talked at the Greater Kansas City ISACA chapter meeting at the University of Kansas.
Okay.
That was really cool. I don't know, just talked about security stuff. Made really good friends. I called them out on the Security Studio Roadshow recap that I write every week, which is on my blog if anybody's interested. Then it was off to Sacramento. And Sacramento was the first time on this roadshow. I've given 20-ish talks on these things, these basics, these fundamentals, these simple things about security. And first time I ran into somebody who was... I don't know, man. I'm trying to think of the politically correct word. It's the first time I ran into a snag, I guess. I'm
trying to think of the right word for it too.
Right? Yeah, well, you and I were talking about that before the show. But he was the epitome of what's wrong in our industry, I think, where he was the smartest guy in the room and he wanted everybody to know it, and his ego was not going to let him down. And so what it ended up being is, and I like sharing opinions.
Right.
There's a time and a place to do that. And if you're wasting people's time, that's not the place to share it. But he was, and so I called him out actually in the talk, which is the first time I've ever done that, cause he had another point to make. And I said, what, that you're the smartest guy in the room. And then the whole room went quiet. But whatever, it was good.
I don't know. It had to feel good a little bit to kind of just shut him down.
Well, and afterwards, John was like, that guy was an asshole. I'm like, well, you run into him.
Yeah, it happens
in our industry. So it's good. It's good to be back. This week, I'm back on the road again to Kansas City tomorrow, and then I'll be in Orange County speaking at Webster University.
Wow. Which
is a joint seminar with ISACA, ISSA, and OWASP.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. What the weather does not suck in California.
Yeah, I bet. It's going to be warm here. It's going to be like right around 40.
That's not warm. That's not warm, Brad. All right. So the Security Studio Roadshow is going really well. We're getting a lot of people. The word is spreading. If you don't know about the Security Studio Roadshow, you can check out my blog, evanfrancine.com, and you'll see it posted there. But really, it's about getting everybody on the same page. It's about finding our common ground with information security, not finding the perfect ground, but finding the common ground and, benefiting the business from that common ground. So it's working well.
That's good.
All right. So enough of that. What else do you have to add? What are you doing this week? You don't even know. It's Monday morning and you don't know.
I've been doing IR stuff and helping out.
Oh, that's right.
It'll be cool because we'll talk to Kenneth. We actually found and grabbed a Medusa locker off of a machine. So that was the first time we've seen that. So it's exciting.
Our guest will be able to give us some good insight on that. Speaking of our guest, joining us this week, and I'm excited to talk to him because, one, he's super credible. I know him from B-Sides, week one of the Security Studio Roadshow. John and I traveled out to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is the capital of Pennsylvania, by the way, middle part of the state, and spoke at B-Sides. And I spoke in the afternoon, mid-morning session, and the keynote was given by this guy with a cowboy hat on. I'm like, who is this guy? And he's talking about, information security even back in like the 80s, 90s. And he's talking about, viruses and threat hunting and all this cool stuff. And I'm like, I got to talk to this guy. So after he gave his keynote, I walked up to him and just, struck up a conversation. And his name is Ken Bechtel. So Ken, you want to say hi?
Hi. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Excited to do this.
Yeah, I am too. I'm excited to talk about, kind of your past, share some of your wisdom, some of the things that you've seen from the old days. And I say the old days, but our industry is not that old.
Right.
Depend on who you talk to. Information security as we know it 45 to 50 years old at the oldest.
Right. And when did you get started in information security?
1984.
All right, so I was right, the 80s.
Yeah.
So tell me, how'd you get started?
Well, that's why I'm chuckling here. It was it was kind of a funny thing. I mean, that was back in the days when Apple IIe's were big, TRS-80s were big. IBM PCs still booted off of a single-sided 180K 5.25-inch floppy diskette. I just graduated Advanced Individual Training AIT in the Army as an Intel analyst. I was assigned as a driver for a Division G2 operations team, and hey, Private Bechtel, you know about these computer things, right? Yes, sir. You actually know how to program them? Yes, sir. Good, you're the automation security NCO.
Nice.
Sir, I'm a private. I'm not an NCO. You're an acting NCO now. Help Captain Weller write up the policies on these things. And I like to say it's been downhill since then.
It's been downhill. So it's Bechtel. It's not Bechtel.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Bechtel.
My apologies. And
no worries.
And do you get,
I answer to just about anything except for late for dinner.
There you go. And what do you call yourself? Do you prefer to be called Kenneth or Ken?
I prefer Ken.
Okay. All right. So you started.
We leave the formal stuff for the legal beagles.
Oh yeah, I suppose you've probably had some experience with that over the years.
More than I can care to count.
Right. All right. So you started your career in '84. You were the last for whatever reason, and I think a lot of us back then. I wasn't in security back then. I was in what was I? High school. But I remember the Apple. But I do remember the Apple II, and I do remember programming on the Apple II.
I do remember the 5.25-inch floppy.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I remember some of that stuff, and then but I got into security because I was the guy in the warehouse who understood PCs better than anybody else, and so they kind of nominated me too. That was, everything else is history now. So when did you get out of the Army?
I got out of the Army in '93, and that was really when I started, because it's additional duties as assigned in the Army. I learned about these things called computer viruses in '88, and I'm like, that's going to bite us in the backside, and started tearing into them. And in '93, I got out. I was just divorced, single father, and I'm looking at my skill set saying, what can I leverage to put food on the table and take care of my baby girl?
Mm-hmm.
And I looked and I saw that computer security, computer support was a big thing, or on the horizon. Was not a big thing then.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but here in central Pennsylvania, we're still way behind the 8 ball when it comes to security awareness and security efforts. And I think you saw that when you were out here for B-Sides.
Yeah.
Started working with some companies doing PC support and desktop side support, and at the same time continuing to do independent research on to these viruses, worms, Trojans, and things like that. Interacting with some really cool and interesting people.
In this industry? Never.
Yeah.
All right. So
it seems everybody in the industry is some level of functioning alcoholic, at least after hours.
Right.
More work gets done around the bar table than it does in the office room.
Yeah. Well, I was in that same boat. I quit drinking. How many years is it? 18 years ago. For that reason, it wasn't pretty. So, do you recall the first virus you ever saw?
Yeah, it was actually Dark Avenger.
Wow.
Like I said, I was working in the Army. I was running an emergency operations center. And I just read about these things called computer viruses. So I'd take a box of diskettes, and there was a thriving black market in Korea at the time. You take the diskette downtown to the vendor, and it was $1 a disk to get duplicated. Didn't matter what program you were putting on; it was $1 a disk. So you could pay $1 and get Norton's Disk Doctor. You could pay $5 and get Harvard Graphics because it was on 5 diskettes, stuff like that. So what I would do is I'd go downtown. So
Apple, what was it? Sorry.
I'm sorry?
Windows 95 would be $26 then.
Yeah. I mean, when you look back at it, our whole OS was in 180K, and today 180K, you can't write a program that small.
No. Wow.
But so I was going downtown and I was buying these diskettes, and I was trying to, we didn't have quote unquote spare PCs, but I was using debug to go through some of the different executables and such, and trying to find something, anything that I could, look at boot records, use the Norton Disk Doctor to analyze the disk and the files and stuff like that. And the one day, one of the other NCOs on the team, "Hey, Ken, you got to look at this computer. I think something's going wrong." And I look, and you can see the classic symptoms of Dark Avenger. Files are being wiped out. The diskette drive just continuous chatter, the whole 9 yards. So we turned off the computer. We happened to have a copy from C2 Mug, which was a DoD software library of shareware. Booted up clean, ran McAfee scan, verified that it was actually Dark Avenger. Used another, what was that? It was another antivirus software product at the time that would actually clean, and we cleaned up Dark Avenger. And then I took the executable. He happened to be playing Tetris. I remember that well. And started tearing that apart to find out what it did, how it did it, and why it did it. So,
okay. And this was 88?
This would have been 89.
Okay.
Early 90. Yeah, it would have been closer to early 90 because it wasn't long after that I was rotated back stateside.
Okay. And then, so then in the Army, was that kind of your job, was to support PCs and make sure that they're functioning, which part of that would be, hunting down these viruses and getting rid of them?
That was an additional duty as assigned.
Okay. Okay.
Because I knew all these computer thingies, and, you were the automation security NCO back there. Okay, we'll let you do that again here. And it just kind of follows you once you get that kind of expertise. Actually wound up writing my first paper while I was in the Army because, we had a lot of ignorant individuals. And I'm saying ignorant in the typical, in the traditional manner, lack of education.
Yeah, we don't have any of those anymore.
Well, it wasn't that they were ignorant on purpose. They just, there wasn't any educational material on this stuff at that time.
Oh, right. Right.
So I wrote up a small white paper. What are computer viruses? And it pretty much was a definition sheet. What's a virus? What's a worm? What's a Trojan? And some of the best ways to protect against them and what to do if you ever suspect your machine of being infected with one. Mm-hmm. 5th Infantry Division, I was working at a brigade, and that became one of the popular go-to read items for everybody in the division.
That's cool.
I think it even got kicked up the line. But
do you still have that document?
I've got it somewhere, but is it accessible? I don't know. I still got those 5 1/4-inch diskettes.
Because if you do have it, it'd be awesome to read it and share it. You know, the history of because we have in such a short period of time, we have such a fascinating history.
Well, and how far it's come, how quickly.
Oh my gosh! Right.
It is funny. You mentioned the other duties as assigned, and how many of us that have been around for 15 plus years before really this became a big thing. That's how people got into it. Like I played games and it just kind of fell on me, or
I showed up late to the meeting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's still a lot of people that are getting into it just like that. Speaking with one young lady at B-Sides, and she mentioned how in my presentation I'd said, the early adopters were people that, well, you know how to run a virus scan, so you're the corporate virus defense guy. She goes, I'm one of those people, even today.
Oh, wow.
I knew how to install virus scan, so I'm the automation security person, and I want to learn more. It's still happening, just not on as large of a scale as it was back in the day when we were actually, unbeknownst to us, building the foundations for what's coming up today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Well, one of the things I think the thing I admire the most about people that, have been in this industry a long time is we understand the fundamentals of security better than I think many of the new crop kind of coming up through the ranks today. Because we were sort of forced to, right? I started out as a network guy. I had to understand how networks work. And then, you take that.
It wasn't drag and drop?
No, right? It was all command line, right? And when computers only did what you told them to do,
right,
and you had to tell them much more directly than today.
Yeah, even now it's like you type in a command or whatever, and you're like, oh, no, I realized I had a single typo, but do what I meant.
Right. Yeah.
But
so then, what did you do? So Ken, after getting out of the Army in '93, where'd you go from there?
Well, I did go. I worked for a large telephone company doing desktop support until I could wound up working for Bob Bales over at NCSA, which went into ICSA and is now ICSA Labs, a division of Verizon. We were actually set up the first antivirus testing protocols and certifications. When Bob's vision, and I give credit for him, and may he rest in peace for it, he wanted to be the underwriter's laboratory of the cybersecurity world. Because back in, this was about 95 time frame, at one of our meetings, he was saying, look, we've got all these firewalls coming out that are making these audacious claims. Your antivirus vendors are promising perfect support that never needs updated, and those companies are no longer around. Gee, I wonder why.
Right. And so what was his name?
Bob Bales.
Bob Bales. We still have these problems today, don't we?
Yeah.
We still do.
It's funny, as far as we've come with, technology and what we can do, these, fundamental issues still kind of kneecap us.
Well, and what a pioneer Bob Bales must have been to recognize as far back as the mid to early 90s, that we needed some sort of, like you said, underwriter's laboratory for security, because we still need it today. We still have all these audacious claims. We need,
not to take away from anybody, but IFF, there's potential, but there's also a lot of baggage there that would interfere with claims of independence and whatnot. And there's other organizations that are in a similar boat that could have gone that way, but for one reason or another didn't, and now they've got so much attachments and cross-linking and contamination that there's always going to be a question of are they truly independent, or are they out there just to make the buck?
Right. Yeah, the money grab.
I mean, we even heard it at one of the B-Sides presentations on, well, how do you know that your test hasn't been paid for by the company? And a lot of times they are.
Oh, right. Yeah. How many studies do we see in our industry, surveys, research that is sponsored by a product vendor?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much all you see.
Right.
And then you got a question, is it a legitimate, independent, unbiased survey, or since they paid for it, did they get final edit and say, let's cut out those results because they don't match our preconceived notions? So you're always going to be questioning that as long as those tests and those surveys are done by a security organization.
Right, right. So you worked with Bob Bales, and when did Bob pass away?
Oh, not too long ago, maybe 3 years at the most, maybe 4. Kind of hard to say. I hate to say it. It seems to be running together a lot lately.
Oh, I know. I'm feeling the same way.
It's crazy. I just looked it up, and there's a immediate release from 95 where, the NCSA is selecting Internet Security Systems Internet Scanner to help define testing criteria for ensuring Internet firewalls live up to their promise. That's really cool. That's so far ahead at the time.
I know, and Bob Bales is, it's too bad he has passed away, because he's totally a person that I think I would get along with really well, just based on what you said,
Bob was a great guy. Very easy to talk with, and while we had our disagreements from time to time, they were always professional, and it was a discussion. It was never a shouting and arguing match.
That's right.
That's what you want. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially back then when there was no right answer, there was no foundation. It was not uncommon to have a room full of PhDs and a room full of with high school dropouts and college dropouts all sitting around the same table and respecting each other as peers and just throwing out ideas and discussing the merits of each idea. Got heated sometimes, but at the end of the day...
you leave the room and you go have a beer with them, and it's, it's all good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I wish I would have been in some of those rooms. Because I do remember some of those discussions, but they don't happen like that much anymore.
It's all online.
That's true.
Anonymous behind nobody's. Yeah, there's a difference too with that, right? With the sitting face to face to someone and having that discussion versus behind a screen.
Right.
Well, we did have, especially because we were so dispersed, we did have a lot of discussions in private email lists and even places like AltCompVirus on Usenet. Now, AltCompVirus was more of a snake pit because you never knew who was really there, but the mailing lists were, for the most part, vetted. And one of my more favorite conversations to bring up was people don't realize back in the day there was actually an argument. We are antivirus vendors. Why should we detect Trojans? What is a Trojan? Is delete.com a Trojan? Should I detect it? And there was a month-long debate in a mailing list on should antivirus products detect Trojans or not.
That's funny.
And if one's going to detect it, that's going to force the others into detecting them.
Wow.
So it was. I love looking back and reminiscing about the early days, the infant times of the antivirus industry, and being there, sometimes as a bug on the wall, sometimes involved with the discussions, but just being there, it's amazing to look back and see the path that we've traveled. I mean, even back in those early days, believe it or not, there were people that were saying antivirus is dead because these signatures will not be able to keep up with malware when it comes up in the future. You just have to change one byte and you've got a new virus. And this was a time when it took like 6 months for a virus to spread around the world big enough to be called in the wild, not Love Letter where it took 30 seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember Love Letter. That was a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you, so lots of things, over the time from 93 to kind of what you're up to now. Tell me what was your last gig? Let's start there. What was the last thing you were doing? At least getting paid. I'm sure you're doing other things.
Yeah. I'm doing a lot of volunteer work, but I'm also continuing to track the threats and do all that in a non-paid basis, because if I don't keep up with the threats, I'm going to be left behind.
True.
My last paid job was with CyberAdapt. I was kind of sort of a bridge between research and marketing. A lot of the stuff that we do in research, it's a lot of technical mumbo jumbo to people outside the industry.
Yeah.
Even within the computer industry, you start talking things about replication and infection mechanisms and stuff like that, and their eyes gloss over and roll back in their head. So they wanted somebody that could take all that technical knowledge and information, put it into a way that the sales engineers, support engineers, responders, and even the marketing team can go out to customers, potential customers, and the internet at large and say, this is a threat that's going on and this is what we're doing to resolve it.
Mm-hmm.
Worked a lot with mapping things to the ATTCK matrix, helped to do some editing and revision and prioritization of the detection rules. A little bit of a jack of all trade, reverse on some of the major outbreaks, somewhat of a float, if you would.
Yeah. That's an important job. They got to the point that they realized that, they needed more development team, and quite frankly, that's something I can't do. Mm-hmm.
20 years ago, I stopped coding because I wasn't needing that skill set.
Right.
Now I can take, like, if you give me a Perl script or a Python script, I can take and modify it, revise it, make it work in my environment, or do some other things. But I'm not going to tell you I can sit here and write something in the next 30 minutes that'll get the job done.
Yeah. Right.
I can do some bash scripting, quick and dirty. I can do Windows scripting, quick and dirty, just to get my job done. But you want me to write something on a development level? I'm sorry, I'm not the person for the job.
Yeah, and I'm the same way.
Yeah,
I've always been a hack. I've never been creative enough to be able to take an idea out of my brain and put it into code, other than just simple things. Right.
Yeah, just a big one for me was PowerShell for Windows to make it do what I needed for the job. But yeah, coding and dev, it just never appealed to me.
Well, you need time. You need to dedicate your time to it.
Yeah.
So I get that.
I could, and I probably could still do it if I needed to, but I wrote some kick-butt batch scripts back in the day that almost came up to program level, just so that we could literally drop a zip file of infected files into a directory, run the batch file. It would decompress it. It would kick off the virus scan, and then it would log the results, parse the results, and put it into a format that we could process. Some of those batch scripts contain a lot of waits and what ifs and how-tos, but again, it's not programming in my mind.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
And these guys really needed somebody that could focus more on the development side of the house and do some development. And they just weren't getting the value out of me that they were paying me. And, no hard feelings. It was a business decision, and I think it was justifiable. But at the same time, it's been kind of hard for 7 months. I'm down to living off savings and debating, do I sell something so I can pay this bill, or do I pull out money from my 401k plan?
Right.
What's my next step? Yeah, I mean.
Well, and we're going to get to that. I'd like to talk about, the job thing. But one of the things I wanted to ask, and I don't know if I just interrupted you, Brad, but is what you've been around for a long time. You've seen a lot of people, met a lot of people. Ken, what advice would you have for somebody getting into this industry? Do you have some?
Be flexible.
Be flexible. Yeah.
Always be learning. Not just keeping your skills current and up to date, but have that curiosity to want to know why does something work the way it does, and never lose that. That's the only way you're going to stay on top of things. And you lose that curiosity, you lose that drive. You're going to fall behind real quick, and hate to say it, but you're going to become stale and lose any potential that you've had.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that too. It's that constant learning, and I think having that passion, that's one of the things that I know we hire for here, is finding people that have a passion for security, or a passion for something that we can use in security. Because then they'll stay motivated. They'll continue to read the news. They'll continue to tinker and.
Right. Yeah. And we'll get into it with the job hunting piece here. I don't want to jump ahead too much.
So
I'll tell you what, that to me, that was one of the biggest game changers in the antivirus, or not just the antivirus, but the computer security world. Back in, I'm going to put a hard line, just around 2003. Before 2003, 2001, 2000, and earlier, virus authors, let's face it, virus authors everybody looked down on. The hackers, the crackers, the freakers, they looked down on them as having no skill, no talent. They're worse than script kiddies. There's no challenge behind writing the viruses. And, most of the viruses and worm authors were there. I want to be the first to infect whatever platform. I want to get a political message out. And they were doing it just for fun.
Right.
2003, and then you had your attackers, your hackers, your freakers. They were exploiting vulnerabilities in systems, sometimes just to get in and drop a text file saying, "Hi, I was here," just for the challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I know. I remember that the first time I ever was, a system that I was responsible for was compromised. It was from Romania, and it was another developer who had taken, it compromised our database server through a SQL injection attack. And he emailed me to tell me, hey, this is what I did. This is where you can find me. This is how you secure it. You know, it was so much more cooperative back then. It didn't seem like it was so money motivated as it is today.
Well, you know, that's just it. In 2003, Dr. Sarah Gordon did a wonderful paper presented at Virus Bulletin concerning blended threats, is what she was calling them. I remember pretty well. And that's where your viruses and malware are now going to start leveraging exploits. It's not either exploit or malware, it's a combination. And about that time, we also started seeing the professional developers getting into it. With the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Soviet Union, all of a sudden you've got these high-level, highly skilled programmers and developers that can't put food on the table, and organized crime's coming up to them and saying, how would you like to earn $50,000 for a day's effort?
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to turn away from something like that. And sometimes it was the Godfather choice. You know, we're going to make you an offer you can't refuse.
No, that makes sense. So that was kind of the birth time, you know, of professional attackers was, you know, that early 2000s when I think everybody's job, at least the defender's job, got a lot more difficult because of the skill levels of the attackers got much better. Is that kind of what you're saying, Ken?
Yeah, exactly. Nowadays, you have entire research and development teams. They go out and they buy every commercial off-the-shelf antivirus product they can and test their new creation against it. Does it detect it? If it does, we go back to the drawing board. They put every bit of the effort to software development cycle that our software development houses do.
Yeah, that's true.
They have help desks. They have customized ransomware. It's big business now.
No, that's very true.
And that's not even counting the state actors.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The nation state. Yeah, that's our job has gotten difficult. That's for sure. And I think all the more reason for us to be on the same page on how we approach these problems, you know, going back to Bob Bales and the thing that he was doing, you know, getting tools that are actually effective in doing what they're claimed to do, because none of us have unlimited funds to just dump on things. We have to really be more focused. Well, let's get into talking about you, Ken, and kind of what you're currently doing. Let's talk about this labor crunch thing. I mean, is it, from your perspective, it doesn't exist, right?
I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. We do need talented, skilled people, and we need a lot of them.
Right.
However, I think my opinion is a lot of it is self-inflicted too. I mean, they're getting these kids coming out of universities with masters and PhDs, and they don't understand the context of things. Well, why do login screens no longer say welcome and log in? Well, that goes back to the 80s when a hacker successfully defended himself saying, well, it said welcome, so I thought they were welcoming to try. And he got his freedom that way. If you don't understand these complex context issues, how are you going to defend against them now or in the future? To them, malware research, well, anybody that's got a master's degree knows how to reverse engineer and run IDAPRO and can tell me if it's malicious software. Well, there's more to malware research than malware classification.
Right.
There's contexting. And I'm rather, I don't like where we have to assign, well, this is the group that's doing it. I don't like to attribute to people or organizations. 9 times out of 10, the the company that's under attack doesn't care much who's attacking them. They just want the attack to stop.
Yeah.
Let the company, do some research on the back end after we got it resolved. Then we'll figure out context and trying to assign it a value and say, okay, well, it's a nation state and that's why we're being attacked, or it was just straight up criminal activity. There's a lot of people trying to make big money off of attributing, and it's too easy to spoof somebody else's identity and make it look like, there's even a gag running around in the cybersecurity industry, the attribute randomizer. Roll one dice. It has North Korea, Russia, China, every actor that you're normally associated with, and the second dice is Y.
Right. Well, an attribution is always. I mean,
we always say, just don't expect it. If we can find it, that's a bonus, but just don't expect it.
Yeah.
Well, most people don't have logs anyway, so it doesn't matter.
We've done hundreds of incident responses, and attribution is useless. What are you going to do even if you do find out who it was?
Right.
You're going to press charges against the guy in Ukraine?
Yeah, right.
Good luck.
And then going down even that rabbit hole even further, I mean, there's a lot of people that still, they don't see the malware asset and the threat hunting as a specific career path. They see it either as an add-on or, something nice to do, or, well, gee, he knows how to run a debugger. Yeah, he can do the reversing. Well, yeah, it's nice to be a reverse engineer, but are you doing actual malware research? Are you doing actual threat hunting to that? And the actual answer 9 times out of 10 is going to be no.
Right.
And then, let's look at some of these job descriptions that come out.
Yeah.
I want 10 years experience in Windows widget washing. Well, Windows widget washing is only 2-year-old technology. How the heck are you going to get 10 years out of that?
Right.
There was one job that I applied for, and I won't name the company, but talking with, I think, 5 different headhunters contacted me on this same job, and virtually everyone said the same thing. What they want is 3 people. They want a developer, they want a reverse engineer, and they want a threat modeler. But they're putting it all into one person. They're paying, I want to say it was like $52,000 for it.
Oh my gosh.
And not only were you supposed to be able to reverse engineer the threats and identify the threats, but then you were supposed to develop tools for it and ship the prototypes to development for further review, plus develop a web front end and back end for the database.
For $52,000.
I think a lot of the issue, you're kind of hitting it on the head, is that companies don't know still. And so, they're like, oh, entry-level job, but you have to have a CISSP.
Right.
Wait a minute. That requires at least 5 years of experience. How can you? There's a disconnect, I think, from HR into where what's actually needed a lot of times.
Dead on. There is a major, and part of it is our own fault. Because we don't have a standardized job description.
Yeah.
Even though we're a young industry, we're still in flux. What is a malware analyst to you is not a malware analyst to me. What is a
it's almost like we're not speaking the same language.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Cybersecurity management to Company X is a CISO for cyber for Company Y.
Right.
There is no standardization. Many HR teams think that every cyber position has to know coding, and it's like, why if you never use it?
Right.
There. Don't get me started on the lack of hardware understanding.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
right.
So
I've run Cat5 cable. I know the difference between a chatty NIC and a failing NIC and general network traffic. But you ask these malware analysts that are being grown, or these masters with cybersecurity, and they're like, hardware?
Yeah.
What's hardware?
Right.
Well,
I started my children, 2 of them that are, show propensity for security, started them actually in electronics.
Mm-hmm.
Learn how circuitry works, learn how things get put together, because the circuitry will just sit there and won't do anything until you learn how to just program it. Right. You don't have to
it only does what you tell it to do.
And you don't have to be a programmer to, to do some simple logic.
So I got a question. Just looking at your LinkedIn, what are the types of responses you're getting from companies that, when they're letting you down?
That's the worst part of it. 9 times out of 10, I'm getting 0 response at all. I've applied for over 200 positions. I've gotten maybe 20 callbacks and interviews.
Wow.
And then, you'll go down through the line of a bunch of them, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you're great. You're just what we want. I'm going to reschedule your interview for next week. Next week comes, you send a follow-up email, nothing. You try and get them on the phone, you go straight to voicemail.
Wow. Yeah. 200 positions with a guy.
Crazy. Well, so I'm sort of feeling a little bit of like, so when I was looking to move up to the Twin Cities areas, I did not 200, but probably 24 interviews, and a lot of phone interviews in person, and they went where I thought went really well, would leave with, hey, yeah, feels like it's a great fit. And then just some random excuse. I got a bunch. Well, you're not local already, or things like that. Luckily, Evan and Kevin didn't take that, but, I think
I've got,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've gotten quite a lot of that. I've gotten, if you move to Maryland, Virginia, Dallas, and quite frankly, yes, I know my location is not an ideal for a lot of people. I understand that. I was expecting to lose interest from several companies for that, but it seemed like 2 years ago, there was a lot more openness to remote work. This time around, there's not been that openness to,
which is insane, because you can do 99.9% of everything that needs to be done remotely.
That's what I keep saying.
But,
and then there have been a few that I've talked to through back channels, and they've said point blank to me, hey, look, the hiring team looked at your resume, and they're afraid they can't afford you.
That was exactly where I was going to go next, is looking at it, I'd be like, I'd love to have this guy, but I don't know if there's any way I could afford him.
Well, let me point blank say I'm remarkably affordable. I'm not looking to be rich. I've got friends that have quite literally made millions off of this. Some of them are actually retired at this point. I'm not looking for that. I've always been traditionally underpaid for my skills, and as long as I can pay my bills and take care of my family, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not looking to be part of the 0.5% or whatever the number is today.
Right.
I'm doing this. I wouldn't be doing it for 30 plus years if I didn't have the passion and the drive for it.
For sure.
The money to me, it's a necessity evil, because I got to pay my bills too.
Right. Exactly. I'm the same way. I give away free stuff all the time here. Now the business people don't let me do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, Evan, we have to pay people's salaries. I'm like, yeah, I guess. That's true. Well, we're coming up on time. So I think a couple of things I'd like to do. Ken, I'd like to have you on the show again because I'd like to stay in touch and I'd like to explore this topic more. I feel like we didn't get enough into kind of the challenges of getting a job right now. But
well, I hate to say it. This is such a complex issue. I mean, I did a nice little article on LinkedIn on the challenges I've encountered and that people have talked to me since I started logging my adventure in finding a job. There's so many complex issues. I don't think we could get it discussed in 5 1-hour shows. I mean, it's complex. But yeah, I would love to be back.
Yeah, I think so, because at least in this show, we gave an introduction to who you are. And for people online that want to follow Ken on LinkedIn, it's Bechtel, Bechtel. Follow Ken if you have a position, help Ken. But we're all in this together. I mean,
Well, and here's the
big
thing.
Industry.
Like he's kind of touched on, like, I think companies are looking for cheaper, younger, but there's that expertise and that experience that you just can't fake, right? Like we're looking for some senior people to help train the next group, right? That tribal knowledge, that experience of being in the trenches, you cannot fake that. You can't rush it. It just, there's only one way to get it. So.
Well, and you know,
and something you brought up earlier on that, I mean, you were mentioning egos.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. To do your job, you've got to have enough of an ego to be confident in yourself and your skill set, but you can't let your ego get in the way of training the next generation or learning from them as well.
Amen.
Absolutely,
very true. Well, let's get. And I hate cutting this short, but because I do want to talk more. But I think I'd like to get you on another show in the next couple of weeks. I know next week we've got maybe somebody planned, but wherever we can get you in again, Ken, because I want to talk more. I love your approach. I love your wisdom in this industry. We can all learn so much from kind of your path that you've taken.
Yeah, I want to. I'll be honest. I want to geek out a little bit more.
Yeah,
get a little more technical.
Yeah, for sure. And I think some of our listeners want that too, right? We've heard some of our listeners want to get more technical. Yeah. All right. Well, let's do this. So follow Ken on LinkedIn. Connect with him if you know something, even just to keep up on this. Again, Bechtel. Let's get to some news quick before we wrap this thing up. The first is, this is a story from Brian Krebs, one of my sort of favorite authors, but then, he did some things that kind of ticked me off, but that's a whole nother thing.
The research is still solid.
The research is still solid. He's a very good investigative journalist. This is a story so it's on Krebs on Security. This is from the 7th. And it's a study. It says ransomware data breaches at hospitals tied to uptick in fatal heart attacks.
Yeah.
You can't say you weren't warned.
Well, you said this in 2000. When was your last predictions? Was that in 17 or early 18?
I think it was 17.
You said it's going to be deaths this year, and it looks like,
a year off.
Well, or they just hadn't come out with the studies yet. But yeah, as many as 36 additional deaths per 10,000 heart attacks, and that care centers that experienced the breach took an additional 2.7 minutes for suspected heart attack patients to receive an electrocardiogram. And it doesn't sound like much, but I mean...
Unless it's your father.
Right.
Your family member.
I've got, people that have had it, and seconds count. 3 minutes is an eternity when that happens.
Well, and it's only going to get worse.
Right.
Well, and you have equipment now. It's hardware,
right,
in people's bodies that do things, and they only do things that they've been programmed to do. And programs have
You can
bugs.
program them with Bluetooth.
Well, programs have bugs,
right?
And vulnerabilities. And I can only imagine, Ken, what do you think about ransomware? I mean, holding somebody's defibrillator as ransom.
You know, software is written by humans, and all humans fail.
Amen.
We all have flaws, as hard as we try not to. So if we all have flaws, the software we're going to write is going to have flaws.
Yep.
I'm a big proponent of do not pay the ransom, because you're only encouraging negative behavior.
Yes.
But when we're talking somebody's life, literally with a pacemaker, my father had one. A good friend of mine has one. I'd be hard pressed to tell you not to pay the ransom at that point.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, we're talking about somebody's life here.
Well, and these are professional attackers, and attackers know that. They've always capitalized on our flaws as human beings, and they're in it for the money, right? What's the return on investment of attacking, a Medtronic device? Right. Knowing that you're probably going to pay because,
Right. Yeah.
And what insurance are you going to get to cover that?
Well, and that opens a whole can of worms. So
cyber risk insurance isn't going to cover your dead father.
Right. Well, but then what is that what is that company's liability for putting out a device to everybody? They're going to face class action and just get hammered. It's just going to snowball. It's a problem. Same with IoT. It's kind of sort of the same thing. It's a rush to get it out with no real thought around security and updates and all the fundamentals. It's just get to first to market so you can grab that cash.
It's a scary, scary path we're on. And I don't know what the end game is on that, but what Ken said is completely 100% true. Anything that's developed by a human being will have flaws. Period.
What, you mean AI isn't the answer?
Well, including AI. A human being developed AI, it's going to have flaws. And then I've heard, people say, well, you just make an AI to fix the AI. And I'm like, well, that AI also was developed by humans. I mean, it's like for every problem we solve, we create two more. Mm-hmm. It's a bad, whatever. I'll be retired before too long, I hope. And, I'll be in the Caribbean. I don't know what to do, man. Somewhere I got to run. All right. Well, that's it. The other news that we have is GitHub launches a new lab to tackle open source security. Yay, GitHub. I applaud them on that. I'm not going to go into that story. Then Apple fires employee after he texts customer's picture to his own phone. It's not your data. So you taking somebody else's.
Yeah. We've seen that. It's not, excuse me, not just this. I mean, we've seen it with other big name companies that offer in-store support where people have taken things they're not supposed to. You don't pay the best, and
right,
you're probably not going to get the most
best people. You should ask people first. All right, so closing. Okay, episode 54. This one, it's a wrap. Thank you again, Ken, for being on our show. We're going to have you on again.
Yep, thank you for having me.
I think our discussion, definitely benefits our listeners, and just like you said, it's a complex issue, and I'd like to dig in more. Mm-hmm. I enjoy talking with you too. That's just an added benefit.
This was fun.
Yeah, and thank you to our listeners. Keep the questions and feedback coming. We do love it. Well, at least Brad, I think you do. I don't actually read people's emails because
I've actually been logging in and checking.
What?
I know. I finally remembered to bookmark it so I would not forget. It'd be like 3 weeks. I'm like, I should probably check.
Yeah. Send us things to email or by email to unsecurity@protonmail.com. If you're the social type, socialize with us on Twitter. I'm at Evan Francine and Brad's at Brad Nye. Ken, do you have a way you want people to socialize with you?
They're welcome to link up with me at on the LinkedIn. Okay. Team Antivirus. I've had that on the internet for 20 years as of September. Mm-hmm. That's teamant-virus.org. Welcome to send me an email there as well.
Awesome. And that picture.
I'm there. Just look Ken Bechtel and antivirus. You'll find me. I'm out there.
When did you see the picture I took off your website?
Yeah, I have got to update the website. My goodness, that's an old picture.
I love it. All right, we didn't even get to talk about your cowboy hat. We're going to do that next time too. All right. Well, have a great week, Ken. We'll be in touch, sir.
All right, sir. Thank you kindly.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the UNSECURITY podcast. We value our listeners and would love to hear from you. Give us your feedback by emailing us at unsecurity@protonmail.com. That's UNSECURITY@protonmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week to hear the latest insights from Brad and Evan.